Maybe the Dark Passenger is just a feeling.
It can't be.
Why?
Because if there's no Dark Passenger, then I'm responsible for everything I've done.
In that moment, we're given an unfiltered look into Dexter Morgan's torment, a life overshadowed by his dark passenger. Now, what if Dexter's struggles isn't so different from the ones we face every day? I'm Dr. Patrick Kingsep, and today we're diving into the psychology behind Dexter's dark passenger. Now, have you ever had a thought that felt completely foreign, so out of character that it made you stop and question yourself? A thought so unsettling you couldn't imagine sharing it with anyone. Now, thoughts like that can be unsettling, even frightening, but they're also part of being human.
Makes me think maybe you can control this.
You really believe that?
I didn't, but maybe now I do.
So let's unpack what Dexter's story can teach us about understanding and even embracing our inner conflicts. For Dexter, the Dark Passenger is this foreign, almost alien invasive force, a shadowy presence that seems almost entirely separate from who he wants to be.
Or is that just a lie the Dark Passenger tells me?
In psychology, we call these Ego-Dystonic Thoughts. They're the thoughts, urges, or impulses that clash with our core sense of self and values, making us feel like something is wrong or it's out of place.
The mask is slipping.
Dexter doesn't want to be a killer. He's repulsed by the idea on one level, but his dark passenger urges him forward, driving his actions in ways he doesn't always feel he can control.
And now all my secrets are floating to the surface. Where is the orderly, controlled, effective Dexter?
Now, this mirrors how intrusive thoughts work for many of us. They pop up uninvited, repeated, relentless, and often disturbing. Now, think about someone with obsessive compulsive disorder. They might have intrusive fears about harming someone they love, not because they ever would, but because their brain fixates on the possibility. Or someone with anxiety might be overwhelmed by catastrophic what-ifs, imagining worst-case scenarios they just can't escape. Or consider the sudden, irrational urge to do something completely out of character, like standing up and shouting in the middle of a quiet meeting, or swerving off the road while driving. Now, these fleeting thoughts are not intentions. They're just your brain processing possibilities, often leaving you wondering, why would I even think that?
My Dark Passenger is like a trapped coal miner, always tapping, always letting me know it's still in there, still alive.
Now, what makes these thoughts even harder to deal with is how they conflict with who we believe we are. Dexter knows he's supposed to be a loving brother, a dependable coworker, even a caring father, but the Dark Passenger pulls him in the opposite direction, creating an endless internal tug-of-war.
Well, now you have me. Someone who loves you more than you will ever fucking know. And in spite of all of this, I still believe that there is good in you.
So how does Dexter manage these overwhelming urges? He relies on rituals. His code, the moral framework instilled by Harry, isn't just a set of rules.
You really believe in nothing?
Suppose I believe in a certain set of principles so that I don't get into trouble.
Sounds like something I might teach a puppy.
Is that so bad?
It's his lifeline, a way to channel his darker impulses into something he believes has purpose. But here's the thing. Rituals don't resolve the thoughts. They just mask them. And for Dexter, this mask starts to slip. Now, here's where things get more complicated. Over time, Dexter's relationship with his dark passenger evolves. There are times when the passenger stops feeling like something separate from Dexter and starts to feel like a natural part of who he is. It's no longer just an unwanted force.
I was right to channel your urges instead of trying to suppress them.
You think I could just walk out of here and call the whole thing off?
If it were this simple, watching you for 24 hours a day, don't you think I would have tried it?
It becomes part of his identity. So this change highlights the difference between ego-dystonic thoughts, which feel out of place and conflict with our sense of self, and ego-syntonic thoughts, which feel like a natural part of who we are. Ego-syntonic thoughts are the ones that feel comfortably within our sense of identity. They don't feel foreign. They feel like a natural part of us. For Dexter, this shift happens when he begins to justify his actions, seeing himself not as a killer, but as a vigilante. He doesn't just tolerate the passenger, he starts to rely on it. Now, this can happen to anyone. The more we're exposed to certain thoughts or behaviors, the more they can start to feel normal, even if they once felt wrong. For Dexter, his feelings become less about following the code and more about following and fulfilling his own desires. The passenger isn't just a shadow anymore. It's part of who he is.
But I have to be free to be who I am.
It is a capital offense to be who you are,
I'm
Dexter.
taking out the trash. Trash that would otherwise be left to putrefy.
But this normalization comes with a cost. For Dexter and for us, accepting intrusive or unhealthy thoughts as part of our identity can lead to behaviors we never imagined we'd justify. Dexter's ability to live a double life is built on a psychological defense mechanism called dissociation. This is where the mind separates conflicting parts of experience to maintain a sense of stability. For Dexter, it's the ultimate survival tactic. On one side, he's the perfect brother, boyfriend, father, and co-worker.
Deb, I'm still your brother. Nothing's changed.
Everything's changed. I don't know if it can ever be the same again.
A man who just blends seamlessly into society. On the other hand, he's a predator driven by the dark passenger to fulfill his darkest urges. By compartmentalizing, Dexter convinces himself that these two worlds can coexist without clashing. But dissociation isn't as clean and simple as Dexter makes it seem. There's always a cost to this kind of mental separation. In real life, dissociation is often a coping mechanism people use to deal with overwhelming emotions or trauma. It's the mind's way of saying, this is too much to handle right now. Let's put it in a box and just deal with it later. So while dissociation can be helpful in the short term, providing a sense of safety, it often leads to problems down the line. When parts of our experience or feelings are tucked away and ignored, they don't just disappear. Instead, they simmer beneath the surface, waiting for a chance to resurface, often in ways that feel out of control. Dexter's dissociation works for a while. It allows him to maintain relationships and function in the world. But over time, as his emotions grow more complex, the cracks in his compartmentalization starts to show. Dexter's dissociation begins to falter when he starts forming deeper connections with people around him. Take his relationship with Rita, for example. At first, it's easy for him to maintain a facade. He sees their relationship as a useful cover, something that reinforces the idea of him being a normal, everyday guy. But as his feelings for her deepen and their family grows, he's forced to confront the fact that he does care. These emotions conflict with his identity as a predator, threatening the walls that he's built.
You got quite the God complex.
This session's over.
This tension intensifies with children, particularly Harrison. Dexter wants to be a good father, but the dark passenger doesn't disappear when he's tucking Harrison into bed. Instead, it lurks in the background, creating this constant sense of conflict. His dissociation, the neat separation of his two lives, becomes harder and harder to maintain. The result? Dexter begins to lose control. For Dexter and for anyone relying heavily on dissociation, there's a limit to how long you can keep things buried.
Sergeant Dokes thinks he knows my secrets, but he only needs to look at this, my body of work, to know the real me.
Ignoring a part of yourself doesn't make it go away. Instead, it festers, finding ways to just leak into your life. In Dexter's case, this leak shows up as mistakes, slip-ups, and this increasing inability to maintain the balance he's so carefully constructed. The consequences of dissociation can look like emotional numbness. And this is this feeling of being detached or disconnected from loved ones, even when you want to feel close.
I want to let you in. Honestly, I don't know how. Never learned.
And then, of course, there's the good old self-sabotage. The unresolved parts of ourselves sometimes lead us to make choices that conflict with our goals or our values. So Dexter's unraveling is a dramatic example, but it illustrates a universal truth. We can't outrun the parts of ourselves we don't want to face. And Dexter's story isn't just about a fictional killer. It's a mirror for the battles we all face in our own minds. Intrusive thoughts may not push us towards Dexter's extremes, I hope, but they can feel just as overwhelming. His struggles offer, I think, valuable lessons for managing our own inner conflicts. So one of the most important things we can take away from Dexter's journey is that intrusive thoughts don't define us. Just like Dexter's Dark Passenger, these thoughts might feel overpowering, but they're not who we are.
What I know about you makes you a completely different person.
But I'm not. I'm the same person I've always been. Your brother, the same person who will always be there for you.
So what if Dexter had learned to coexist with his passenger instead?
I lived in shadows for so long, until the dark became my world. But over time, the people in my life flipped on a light.
In real life, mindfulness offers a powerful tool for managing intrusive thoughts. By observing these thoughts without judgment, we take away their power. Acceptance doesn't mean agreeing with or even liking the thoughts. It means making space for them without letting them dictate our actions. Now, Dexter's Dark Passenger is a stark reminder of the complexity of the human mind. Whether we're wrestling with intrusive thoughts or grappling with the tension between who we are and who we want to be, his story challenges us to confront our inner shadows. So here's a question for you. What are the thoughts you're trying to suppress? And what would happen if instead of fighting them, you allowed yourself to understand them, to see them as passengers, not drivers in your life?